It's official as we have a bombshell new Mitch Mner update as it pertains to his future in Toronto. And this report is crazy as for the first time in the Mitch Mner saga, we have some clarity and some serious new updates surrounding his future. We also have some interesting comments from Easton Cowan surrounding Mitch Mner that you're going to want to stay tuned for. It's very intriguing. A ton to go over today, and this is going to be a crazy video. But before we can do it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been absolutely unbelievable. If you're a part of that 71%, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys again for your continued support. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a lot to go over today. Darius, for the first time in a very long time, we have a firm report surrounding Mitch Mner and his future in Toronto. Of course, we've heard a lot of reports about his future, with other teams and how there's other teams involved, all these different things. We'll dive into those in this video as well because we have some updates surrounding other teams that are targeting him. But Chris Johnson came out with a pretty big report here, and it's the biggest one to date. Mitch Mner will test the open market, but the Leafs will be a team he considers. And this is on the Chris Johnson show. So he confirmed it that Mitch Mner is not going to be signing with the Leafs prior to July 1st, which is when free agency opens up. And of course, the Leafs are going to be a team he considers, but for the first time, we have clarity that he is not going to be returning to the Leafs prior to the July 1st deadline. Of course, an extension could still happen, although it remains unlikely, according to Chris Johnson. He is going to be testing the open market fully. So any hopes that some fans may have had about Mitch Mner returning to Toronto before testing free agency has been put to bed, and it's official for the first time.
Yeah, he will not be re-signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He could still sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but won't be re-signing. And I think that's very interesting because, we did hear before that he's not interested in the 8th year. They want the 7 years. I don't think they really care, him and his camp, how many years it is. Obviously, I think they want a shorter term deal with a lot of money so he can re-sign for a lot more money. But I thought that was very interesting that that's what's coming out of this. And he doesn't care about the 8th year, and he doesn't want to re-sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He'll still hear their offer on July 1st, but I wonder if there's even going to be an offer from the Toronto Maple Leafs on July 1st. We know that they wanted to make him one of the highest paid players in the entire league, and certainly the highest paid player in Toronto Maple Leafs history, and he turned that down at one point to hit July 1st. So I think the most likely outcome now is he's not going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf. And I think Carolina, we'll get to this in a second too, has just entered the fray as well, because they're one of the teams that are apparently and reportedly going to offer him the most amount of money. So that's very interesting as well. You could see him down the road in the playoffs possibly, but one thing is for sure, I just don't think he's going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf anymore. He's definitely not re-signing. We know that much, and I don't think they're going to offer him the most money, first of all, or any money on July 1st.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he signed somewhere else, A, what the offer was from the Toronto Maple Leafs, if it was a low ball, or B, even if they make one. But yeah, he won't be re-signing. That's guaranteed, whether he signs following a July 1st extension, or July 1st, negotiations, I guess, versus all 29 or more than that, all the expansion teams, everybody involved. And stay tuned, because we have an interesting tidbit on an expansion team here in a minute. But let's dive into a report by David Pagnotta here. Calgary and Montreal will express interest in Mitch Mner. Don't get the sense those teams are high on his list. Now, we're going to throw this in here. There's only your quick thoughts on this. A couple Canadian teams will express interest in Mitch Mner. I think this was more of a passing by comment by David Pagnotta. He's not saying or reporting that they're both going to be one of the finalists, but he is reporting that they're going to be interested in Mitch Mner, and it seems like every team now in the league is going to be interested, of course, in Mitch Mner here. I suspect that they won't be very high or won't finish super high on the list. I don't think Mitch Mner, from all we're hearing, wants to return to Canada unless it is the Leafs. It wouldn't make a ton of sense in that regard. Both of those teams are much worse than the Leafs right now when it comes to winning a Stanley Cup, and maybe that's what he wants. But I can't imagine this is going to happen. I think Carolina, the Penguins, Utah, Seattle, everyone else has a higher chance than these two teams. Though, I will say, if everything else was equal, Montreal does make a lot of sense from needing a high-end talent point of view. But I don't suspect this is super likely, but very interesting. I think teams like Chicago and Carolina and Chicago are much more likely.
Yeah, and I think he wants to go to a no-tax state. That's another thing that we heard as well earlier in the offseason, I guess, already that started for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But again, Carolina, as you can see here, is an interesting option. Obviously, Chicago, it's pretty enticing. He's gonna make a lot of money in Chicago, and he gets to play with Connor Bedard, so that's an interesting one as well. Obviously, we heard Vegas. I feel like some of the teams are starting to narrow down a little bit because we heard Vegas as well, but I don't know if they have the cap space to do that for what he wants to make. And obviously, we heard Florida Florida, but then the Florida Panthers have kind of disappeared from the conversation as well now. So it's going to be interesting. I will humor it for a second. I don't think he's going to another Canadian team. Certainly not the Montreal Canadiens. I think that's for sure. Montreal, I think, needs a center anyway. Obviously, he would make an impact on the Habs, but I don't think he's signing in Canada or Buffalo, right? As the saying goes, everyone has the Canadian teams and Buffalo on their no trade list, and I'm sure he probably doesn't want to sign there. So it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up going, but he's not going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, and I don't think he's signing in Canada either.
Yeah, and I'm not going to rule out the Leafs fully yet. I've seen crazier things happen. I mean, last year we thought he was going to get traded. I don't think it's like at this point. Vegas seems to have fallen out. I think reports came out they prefer Sam Bennett over Mitch Mner at the dollar figure that Sam Bennett's going to command as he continues to dominate in the playoffs and continues to to fall on goalies or maybe get shoved into goalies in yesterday's game, depending on what side of the spectrum, the side of the fence you're on that. But regarding Mitch Mner here, PSA: if Mner leaves Toronto, the Maple Leafs are still a playoff lock guaranteed. They are not all of a sudden worse than Montreal, Buffalo, and Detroit. Come on. And that's something else that's interesting. I want to see your thoughts are on this, because at the end of the day, I think the Leafs are going to be a playoff team regardless. Of course, how they replace Mitch Mner is going to be the biggest indicator here, how they fill and we've had videos, and we're going to continue to have videos on it, including one later today, so stay tuned for that, surrounding Mitch Mner and what happens if he leaves. They're going to be a fine team regardless. I think they're going to make the playoffs. You could argue they're going to have a better chance at playoff success without Mitch Mner, depending on who they replace him with. But I mean, a lot of Leafs fans, some prefer, Carolina, because of course it stays away a little bit, of course, from within the division at least. And then, of course, you don't have to worry too much about, the playoffs in theory with Snezhkov, Aho, and Mitch Marner. But I mean, the question is now, there's a lot of things going on about Mitch Marner here. I mean, people are talking about retiring his jersey in Toronto. It seems all but inevitable that he's going to leave it. But there is a side of it of, he is a very good regular season player. And then the question remains, let me know, leave it down below right now. Do you think the Leafs miss the playoffs if Mitch Marner leaves?
No, they're going to make the playoffs. They're still a great team. Yes, you want to replace the 100 points. A lot of people, that's the question right now. Where are you going to replace the 100 points? You're not looking to replace Mitch Marner, right? Necessarily, not one for one. And you never will. He's a great regular season player that plays in all situations. He can play on the penalty kill. He's great 5-on-5. He's great on the power play, all of those things, right? And you're going to be missing that. But it's not about that. It's about building a championship team now in the Toronto Maple Leafs, in the city of Toronto. And I don't think you can with Mitch Marner. We've seen it at this point. I just don't know if it's possible, right? So that's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. I also think that was a bit of rage bait, honestly. Like, he's not going to get his number retired. There's no way that his number's going up there with Doug Gilmour and Matt Sundin and the like, and obviously, Bill Barocco and all those guys. But, that's certainly not going to happen. But was he a great player? For sure. And, there is still a world he resigns as a Toronto Maple Leaf, as alluded to, right? It's not going to be re-signing, but, maybe he does sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think it's going to happen, but, there is a lot going on right now in terms of what's going to happen with Mitch Marner. So it's going to be interesting to watch, but I don't think he's going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Yeah, let us know below what your thoughts are. It's going to be interesting. He has a list of 7 or 8 teams he's looking at. The Leafs, of course, in theory, are one of them. And there's other teams like Utah sneaking in and a bunch of other guys. So let us know below what your thoughts are on that. And it's wild. Things are getting crazy. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news.